Hi there, my name's Marjorie. 4 weeks ago, I was publicly mocked by my boss in front of the entire company. Laughed at like I was invisible. I gave them 20 years. And then, just like that, they started preparing my replacement right under my nose. But what hurt most wasn't the demotion. It was the silence of the people I once trusted. What would you do if everyone around you started pretending you didn't matter? Before we dive in, have you ever been pushed aside after giving your all? Has someone ever tried to rewrite your worth in silence? Tell me, what time is it where you are, and what state are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I really want to know. The first thing I noticed wasn't the music or the lights. It was how perfectly rehearsed everyone seemed. Laughter floated like champagne bubbles, artificial, and just light enough to cover the tension beneath. I stood near the bar, not sipping my drink, just holding it like a prop. 20 years at Granite and Knox, and tonight I was expected to smile as if it all still meant something. I caught Warren's voice before I saw him. Loud, confident, the kind of confidence that only comes from knowing you've already won. She still thinks she's got a shot, he said. Poor thing doesn't realize she's just a relic in heels. The laughter that followed wasn't loud. It was worse. It was measured, careful, just enough to blend in, like they were laughing because they were supposed to, not because it was funny. I didn't flinch. My fingers tightened slightly around the glass, but my face remained still. I turned just enough to catch Caleb across the room. He didn't laugh. He looked at me, and I knew he'd heard it too. Minutes later, as the speeches started, Caleb brushed past me and slipped a phone into my palm. "Play it later," he whispered. I did. Again and again. At 1 a.m., alone in my kitchen, I sat in the dark replaying that clip until the screen burned into my eyes. Warren, drink in hand, smirking. "Let her dream," he said. "Next quarter she'll be gone, and we'll call it a strategic refresh." 16 years ago, I defended Warren in a board meeting when he froze in front of investors. Covered for him during a client crisis he caused. I thought loyalty meant something. I thought I mattered. I was wrong. By morning, my mind wasn't spinning anymore. It was still, quiet, like the calm just before a scalpel cuts. Monday came with its usual smells. Burnt coffee, perfume, paper. The 43rd floor hummed with oblivion. No one looked me in the eye. I walked to my office with the poise of someone who hadn't heard the funeral plans for her own career. "Marjorie," Warren greeted from his glass box of a corner office. "Looking sharp," I smiled. "You too. Big week ahead." Tessa from HR appeared by mid-morning with a folder clutched too tightly. "Can we talk in the main conference room?" She used her soft voice, the one reserved for layoffs and lawsuits. "We've been realigning leadership functions," she said. "You'll transition into a strategic advisory role. Lighter travel, more vision-based planning, a better fit for your strengths." My title was gone. EVP erased and replaced with nothing. No mention of performance, no acknowledgement of contribution. Just a white-gloved shove out the door, disguised as kindness. "I see," I said. "Of course, your compensation is unchanged," she added, as if that erased the insult. I looked at her, then past her, to the empty chairs, the silent screens, the people pretending not to hear. "Thank you for the update," I said. She blinked, confused. She expected tears or protest. But I'd already buried the part of me that needed validation from this place. Later that night, I opened a folder I hadn't touched in years. Client contacts, strategy briefs, unpublished projections. I renamed it Exit Strategy. The office was quiet, but not peacefully so. It was that sterile, over-sanitized kind of quiet that feels like it's hiding something. I sat alone, the hallway lights flickering overhead, casting long, nervous shadows across the floor. My screen glowed against the darkness, and I scrolled through the internal document archive with the precision of someone who'd done this before. For other people. A folder caught my eye. Strategic Vision 2025. I opened it. Inside was a draft announcement dated 3 weeks from now. It congratulated the incoming Vice President of Strategy, Ethan Cole. Ethan. A junior manager who once asked me how to convert a PDF into a Word doc. The same Ethan who couldn't lead a coffee order without panicking, but who played poker with Warren on Thursday nights. That wasn't a promotion. That was a message. They weren't just removing me, they were replacing me with someone easier to control. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not angry, just cold. The next morning, I passed Tessa in the HR corridor. She saw me, paused, then looked away like she didn't. "Got a second?" I asked. She smiled, tight, polite, corporate. "Of course." We stepped into the break room. She didn't sit. "I found the announcement draft," I said. "You knew?" Her mouth opened, then closed. "Things are changing fast, Marjorie." That was all she gave me. Years ago, when Warren tried to sideline a pregnant analyst, it was Tessa and I who stood up to him. She called it institutional rot. I called it cowardice. Together, we forced the board to reverse the decision. Now she was that rot. "You're better than this," I said. Tessa looked at me like I'd said something childish. "It's not that simple." I almost laughed. "It never is. That's why it matters." She walked out. Later that night, I sat in my car outside the building, engine off. My laptop glowed beside me, connected to the company server through a secure hotspot. One by one, I backed up my project folders, the ones Warren always took credit for. I downloaded vendor contracts, finance audit trails, and cross-referenced Tessa's calendar logs with internal memos. Not to expose her, yet. But because the system was a web, and I needed every thread. 16 years ago, Tessa and I were the only two women in the executive track program. We shared office snacks and fears. Once, we sat in her car during a rainstorm, both of us crying because we thought we'd never be taken seriously. Now, I didn't know who she cried for anymore. I labeled the USB drive. Backbone. Caleb tapped gently on my door before poking his head in. His voice, always careful, carried a trace of guilt this time. "Got a sec?" I nodded. He stepped inside and shut the door behind him. "So, remember the clip I sent you from the gala? I thought Tessa might have had a longer version, like from the original feed." I didn't answer. I just watched him scroll through something on his tablet. His brows furrowed. Then he tilted the screen toward me. "She accessed a file named GALARAWCLIP the next morning, then deleted it. The screen showed time-stamped logs. Access, delete. No backups, no record in the general archive." "She didn't say a word," he added. "Just poof." A hollow settled in my stomach. Not because I hadn't suspected it, but because now I had proof. Tessa hadn't just looked away. She had erased the one thing that could have exposed Warren. "Thanks for telling me," I said. "You okay?" I nodded. "Sure." But I wasn't, and he knew it. After he left, I opened my retaliation file and typed her name under a new tab, Collaborators. Later that night, I called my daughter. She answered on the third ring. "Hey," I said. A pause. "I heard about your job. Aunt Lily said you're not a VP anymore." There was no accusation in her voice, just disappointment dressed as detachment. "I wanted to tell you myself," I said. "I just wasn't ready. So it's true?" "Yes." Another pause. "Why didn't you fight it?" I almost laughed, not at her, at myself. "It's more complicated than that." "You always say that." Her voice thinned. "It's always complicated." The call ended with a quiet, "Good night," but it echoed like a slammed door. I stared at the screen, her contact photo still glowing. 16 years ago, she was 4 and thought I controlled the whole world. She'd sit on my lap while I sorted spreadsheets and ask if I was the boss of all the papers. And I'd say yes, even though I wasn't even the boss of my own time. Now she was 17, and all she saw was a woman who didn't fight hard enough. I stared at my hands. Same hands that once cradled her head after nightmares. Same hands that built client strategies Warren sold as his own. I wasn't tired. I was done. I opened my encrypted drive and began pulling everything. HR notes, exit reviews, travel expense discrepancies, project contributions. Anything that proved I wasn't a ghost in that company. I was the backbone. The silence around me didn't feel passive anymore. It felt complicit. And I'd spent enough time pretending that silence meant safety. I renamed the folder. No more apologies. The message came during lunch. Short. Blunt. I didn't know it had gotten that far. It was from Linda in finance. No context, but I didn't need one. I checked my phone and saw the notification. A public post from a teenager in Chicago, shared from her private story. A clip of Warren at the gala, drunk and smug, dragging my name through the carpet like it was casual banter. My daughter's name was in the comment thread. My daughter. I called her immediately. She answered after the second ring, her voice defensive before I even spoke. I didn't post it, she said. I just sent it to Chloe. She said she wouldn't share it. My throat tightened. But she did. I didn't think... She hesitated. I didn't think people would care this much. You didn't think anyone would care that your mother was being humiliated? My voice cracked. Not with rage, but with exhaustion. You gave them ammunition, sweetie. You lit the fuse. She went quiet, then hung up. That afternoon, I received 3 emails from school board members back in Chicago, each politely worded, each clearly designed to distance themselves. One PTA chair wrote, "We value transparency from all parents involved in foundation grants." Translation: You're a liability now. By the next morning, I could feel the shift at Granite Knox before I even stepped off the elevator. Conversations paused when I walked by. Colleagues who used to greet me suddenly discovered intense interest in their shoelaces. In the elevator, no one met my eyes. In the ladies' room, I overheard 2 junior staffers whispering by the sink. Is it true she got perks from clients? Like trips and stuff? I heard something about gift cards, too. They went silent when I stepped out of the stall. Ladies, I said flatly, if you're going to gossip about a woman's downfall, at least check your facts. Start with the men who taught you how to look the other way. They bolted. By noon, HR had received 3 anonymous reports expressing concern about my ethics, all unsigned, all perfectly timed. Warren, of course, said nothing. That was his favorite trick. Light the fire, then blame the smoke on someone else. Tessa kept her distance. Caleb looked like he wanted to say something, but didn't. And I let him stay silent. I was done rescuing anyone from their own cowardice. I walked back to my office and sat down. For a while, I just stared at the wall. Not because I was numb, but because the heat inside me was finally beginning to take shape. I played the viral clip again, not to torture myself. This time, I watched it like a surgeon studies a wound, precisely, clinically. Every laugh, every nod, every smirk was a cut that hadn't bled out yet. If they were going to try and destroy me with whispers, I'd reply with documents. Truth was slower, but it left fewer fingerprints. That night, I started building the index, folder by folder, client relationships, email strings, deal histories. I didn't rush. I didn't rage. I named each subfolder by department, then by person, then by breach. When I finally closed the laptop, the room felt quieter than usual. Not peaceful, just still. I opened a new draft email. To dorian.quinn@sterlingconsulting.com. Subject: coffee, just to talk. The article landed like a slap across the face. I didn't even find it myself. A colleague forwarded the link with no comment, as if that somehow softened the blow. Too comfortable to lead? The title asked, passive-aggressive in its elegance. A thought piece on executive stagnation, claiming some senior leaders relied on legacy reputation more than actual innovation. It didn't name names. It didn't have to. It quoted language I'd written, verbatim. That morning, 2 clients canceled calls. One assistant asked to reschedule indefinitely. Another emailed to say their department was pivoting in a new direction. No one used the word accused. They didn't have to. Doubt had already done the damage. I sat at my desk, my inbox still open, my coffee going cold. Across the office, Warren walked past my glass wall and gave me a slight nod, casual, polite, performative, like he hadn't lit the match. An hour later, his email arrived. Subject: professional transition. You've had your run, Marjorie. Best to step aside with grace before it gets uglier. He didn't sign it. I stared at the message, pulse steady. Not rage, not fear, just something sharper, cleaner, clarity. The wording wasn't a warning, it was a dare. He wanted me to flinch, to fold, but I wasn't a card. I was the player. 16 years ago, I watched a woman get walked out for asking too many questions about vendor payments. The room applauded her courage, then erased her name from every project she ever led. I remembered thinking, if it ever happens to me, I won't go quietly. Now here I was, with the chance to make good on that promise. I closed the email, then opened a blank document, drafted a timeline. From the first deal I built that Warren claimed credit for, to the client trip he called bonding, but used to funnel side perks. I cataloged it all. Dates, files, who signed what, who knew and said nothing. I wrote on a sticky note and placed it beside my laptop. Truth is the cleanest weapon. That night I moved carefully. I plugged in my backup drive, encrypted every folder, synced duplicates to an offline vault. Then I printed the article. I underlined the quote they'd stolen, drew a red box around it, slipped the sheet into a manila folder and labeled it Final Trigger. The air outside my window felt heavier than usual, like the sky was waiting. My phone buzzed once. Voicemail. The transcription preview made my stomach tighten. I'm pulling out. I'm done with Granite and Knox. Victor Harlan. The envelope Tessa slid across the table was thick, too heavy for just paper. She didn't look at me, just stared at the wall behind my head like it might save her from my reaction. We're hoping to make this as smooth as possible, she said. Her tone was coated in HR sugar, but her fingers were clenched white against the manila edge. You'll see the terms are generous. 3-month severance, continued health care, performance bonus. I didn't move. I didn't touch the envelope. There's also a non-disclosure provision and a non-compete, standard, she added quickly, like she'd rehearsed it. Just sign this, Marjorie. We're all trying to move on. I leaned forward, keeping my voice level. Define generous. She blinked. It protects everyone. No, I said. It protects him. Her mouth opened, then closed. I left without the envelope. Back home, I laid the documents out on my kitchen island like an autopsy. The language was precise, chilling. The NDA alone could have buried me, permanently. No future consulting, no public clarification, no speaking engagements, no transition interviews, not even a LinkedIn update without review. The 3-year non-compete was the real poison. I wouldn't just be silenced. I'd be erased. I highlighted every clause, margin noted every legal loophole. Not out of fear, out of intent. This wasn't an agreement. This was a threat dressed in corporate linen. 16 years ago, I gave a young associate an honest exit reference after she left to expose misused funds. Warren pulled me aside and said, "That was sweet, but loyalty has a longer shelf life than truth." I should have walked then. I emailed the full packet to Joanna, a compliance attorney I'd once helped navigate out of a harassment case Warren tried to bury. Subject line? "Can you review this for fun?" She replied 5 minutes later. "Fun? Number fire? Absolutely. Call you in an hour." I sat at my desk and wrote a reply to HR. I decline the terms as written. I retain my rights and my dignity. Then I opened a new cloud folder and labeled it Witness. Every file synced, every name, every timestamp, every false signature Warren ever made me validate. By evening, I had cleared out the noise in my head. No more doubt, no more waiting for someone else to act. The war wasn't coming. It had already begun. I was polishing a draft pitch when the message popped up on my screen. "Mr. Quinn is free for coffee at 10 a.m. tomorrow." The message popped up in my inbox at 8:12 a.m. Subject line, termination notice. It wasn't for me. Victor Harlan had pulled every contract he had with Granite and Knox. Just like that, 40% of the company's active revenue disappeared into smoke. I stared at the screen, rereading it twice, then once more. Not for disbelief, but for satisfaction. It wasn't a twist. It was the consequence of ignoring the truth too long. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Dana, a former associate. "Have you seen this?" she whispered like the walls had ears. "Emergency board meeting's been called. The investors are in full panic mode. Warren's spinning it as a realignment opportunity." I smiled, not because I felt triumphant, but because I had expected this silence to break eventually. All I had done was stop holding the rope. They were the ones who chose to hang themselves with it. Warren, of course, issued a statement. "We respect Mr. Harlan's decision and are excited for future partnerships. Change is growth." Bullshit dressed in press release formatting. That afternoon, my phone lit up again. This time it was Victor himself. "Marjorie," he said, calm but firm. "For what it's worth, I pushed to keep you. Sat in a meeting and told them flat out, 'You're irreplaceable.' Warren leaned back, smiled, and said, 'She's past her prime. We're grooming new energy.'" The line stayed quiet for a beat. "You're not the only one who heard it," he added. I let the words settle. Not like a wound, but like a match to dry tinder. "I appreciate your honesty," I said. Victor exhaled. "You deserve better. That place, it's lost its spine." 16 years ago. I was denied a promotion in favor of a younger male hire who asked me to format his presentation. Warren pulled me aside afterward and said, "Fresh faces keep the board comfortable." That phrase had lived in my memory like a thorn. Now it was out in the open. I didn't cry, didn't rage. I opened my laptop and updated my tracker. Board alignment status, client renewal timelines, operational vulnerabilities. Every data point had weight now, every line a lever waiting to be pulled. I composed an email to Dorian Quinn, succinct and deliberate, ready to talk next steps. By nightfall, my entire apartment was quiet. No buzzing, no messages, no fake concern. Just me and the hum of inevitability. At 11:03 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Unknown number, voicemail. "Ms. Voss, this is legal at Granite Knox. We'd like to discuss the timing and nature of your exit." "The timing?" I laughed, out loud, for the first time in weeks. The sun was still low when I stepped into my new office. Glass walls, brushed steel fixtures, the kind of silence that came with power. Sterling and Company didn't whisper when I passed. They watched, they nodded. Respect didn't trail from fear here. It moved forward with clarity. He showed up just after 9 a.m. I saw his reflection in the glass before I turned. Warren. Same haircut, same tailored jacket, but none of the posture. His eyes looked older. His smile, thinner. "You won," he said. "You took it all." I waited. He stood a little straighter. "So, is there a seat for me?" There it was. The man who once ordered me to carry his failures in silence now stood at my door, hoping for refuge, for mercy. I gestured to the chair across from mine. "You have 5 minutes." He sat slowly, glancing around like a man trying to remember how confidence felt. "You know, I vouched for you during your divorce," he said. "Back then, the board was ready to push you out. I kept you in." 16 years ago. My marriage collapsed quietly under the weight of long hours and long silences. Warren said he'd cover for me. Instead, he doubled my client load, told people I was eager to prove herself again. "You didn't vouch for me," I said. "You leaned harder when I was already drowning." He flinched but recovered quickly. "We made a good team, Marjorie. You were always the closer." "I still am," I said. "Only now, I close doors." He didn't answer, just nodded once, eyes dull. I stood. "There's no seat for you here, but thank you for making mine mean something." He left without shaking my hand. That afternoon, I opened my inbox to find a message from Tessa. No subject line. Just a file attachment labeled, "Internal HR, Bonus Payout Memo, March." Inside, records of her receiving a discretionary bonus the same week my title vanished. Notes marked it as Leadership Alignment Retention. Code for Stay quiet, stay loyal. Beneath the file, her message. I'm sorry. I thought I had to protect myself, but you deserve the truth. I didn't feel rage, not even satisfaction. Just the soft click of one more puzzle piece falling into place. Justice doesn't always arrive loud. Sometimes it comes in spreadsheets. I forwarded the file to Joanna, my attorney, and typed one line in the body. This isn't about me anymore. The email arrived just as the sun lifted past the horizon, spilling light across my home office. I hadn't opened my inbox yet. I'd been savoring the silence, the stillness that came after surviving something you weren't sure you'd come out of whole. But there it was, from Tessa. No subject line, just her name and a single sentence visible in the preview. I owe you the truth. I clicked it open. She didn't try to justify herself, didn't soften the edges. She admitted it all, that she'd been offered a bonus to keep quiet, that when she watched me get demoted, watched the room erase me, she chose herself. I thought silence was safety, she wrote, but it was betrayal, dressed as survival. I'm sorry. I didn't reply. Not because I hadn't forgiven her, but because some apologies don't need answers. They just need time to echo. 16 years ago, we toasted our first big promotion with cheap champagne in paper cups. Tessa cried. I promised her we'd never let the system pit us against each other, and for a while we didn't. I closed the email and opened my journal. Some apologies don't need a response, just space to echo. Later that morning, I stood at the head of a glass-walled conference room filled with new hires, bright, uncertain faces, most of them women. A few carried the scars of past layoffs. Some were starting over after career breaks or detours. I saw myself in all of them, scattered in pieces across the room. We don't ask for seats here, I said. We build the damn table. Heads nodded, pens scribbled. But it wasn't about applause anymore. It was about alignment. About building something that wouldn't collapse just because one man decided your expiration date had passed. That afternoon, I received a final message from Granite Knox's board. Warren Litton has been removed from all consulting contracts, effective immediately, due to reputational concerns. I read it twice. No smile. Just a slow exhale. Justice didn't always roar. Sometimes it simply closed doors. I walked to the hallway drop box and slid in a padded envelope, unmarked except for the words, handwritten across the seal. Some voices can't be silenced. Some names don't fade. Inside, the NDA I never signed. I turned off the lights in my office early that evening. Just as I reached for my bag, the knock came. Ms. Voss? My assistant called gently. You have a visitor. I glanced over my shoulder. From the Department of Ethics. Says he wants to talk about systemic cover-ups. I straightened my blazer. Send them in. Looking back, I realized silence was never safety. It was just a quieter form of surrender. I thought loyalty would protect me. Turns out, it only made me easier to erase. But here's what I know now. Your voice is your strongest asset. Use it, even if it shakes. Especially when it shakes. If they try to shut the door on you, build another entrance. No one gets to decide when your value expires. So let me ask you, have you ever stayed quiet when you should have spoken up? Have you ever let someone else rewrite your story? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If this video hit something real inside you, drop a 1 below or let me know where you're watching from. And if it didn't resonate, tell me why. I'm always listening. And hey, if you want to keep hearing stories that dig deeper than headlines, stories that remind us we're not alone in the messy, beautiful fight to be heard, then hit subscribe and stay with me. We're just getting started.